Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV. Hello and welcome to episode 25 of The Rest is Giant Robots. I'm Andrew Wildman.
I'm Simon Furman, and
we've got an extra person here.
Yeah, we have.
Sorry.
This being our 25th and somewhat 1 year anniversary of The Rest is Giant Robots, we wanted to expand the show a little and invite on our first special guest. So, if you would kindly introduce yourself, Ian.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Ian Rimmer, sometime writer of various licensed products, comic strips, and one-time editor of Transformers for a period when Simon was writing an awful lot of stuff for it. And it was during its real initial boom period, I suppose, from 1985 to its demise in the 1990s.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Andrew and I were talking, and it feels like you're sort of the unsung hero, really, of Transformers UK, because, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the input you put into that comic really made it the comic it became that people love and remember today. I mean, is it something you sort of feel is a part of your CV that you like to shout about, or?
Yeah, very pleased to have been involved in it, and quite amazed at its longevity, about how it's still going strong. And here we are, 45 years later, still talking about it. I know it's had various reboots on various film issues have come out to boost it again. But my goodness me, it's gone very, very well. And who wouldn't be pleased to have been involved in something like that that's lasted so long?
Absolutely. And recently, Skybound, who now have the Transformers comic license, re-released all the UK material in the form of a Kickstarter, the US material too, but the UK material going right back to the beginning. And, the Kickstarter raised something like $4.5 million.
Good grief. Wow.
And it's hard to but credit, isn't it, that it's still popular. It's still got this audience who seem to want it again and again, an American audience who often haven't seen this material.
Yes, indeed. That's right. Yeah, very true. It's here we go. We're still going. Yeah,
we are.
And before you ask the inevitable question, Ian, no, there are no royalties.
No,
I kind of thought not.
No, it's a sad case that the one thing of mine that gets reprinted ad infinitum, and there's no royalties.
I mean, with Marvel US, to get your check from them, you had to fill in a voucher, as they called it, and which on the back said, by filling in this voucher you relinquish any claim to any ownership and whatever, so you couldn't get paid unless you had that. Was there a contract when you were working on, I mean, if you were on Simon's laughing, I guess if you were working on
contract,
if you were working on staff and doing stuff, then you're working for the man anyway, aren't they? But as a freelancer for Marvel UK, were there any contracts? I don't remember.
It was the same principle for us. Although we were staff and got up income and paid staff, we were not paid to be writers, or we were just paid to produce the issues week by week by week. Yeah. So if we did any freelance work, freelance writing, we filled in the same vouchers as everybody else did. So at the same time as if you handed over a script and you wanted to get some money for it, you signed over your rights to it straight away.
Yeah, I can't remember if they had that voucher system at Marvel UK. I remember it at Marvel US, but Marvel UK
is a version of it, certainly. It's the same sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I remember filling those in and never reading the back, really. And it was only later I thought, oh, God.
That's why it's printed on the back, so nobody ever reads it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It literally is like a shot in the back of the head.
So, Ian, we first met on Scream, IPC magazines. You as editor, me as sub-editor. And can you tell us a bit about, if you want to rewind before that, and just tell us a bit about your early career in publishing and comics?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, it all began in I joined IPC magazines as a photo story writer for girls' teenage fiction, uh, uh, which was photo stories very popular late 70s, early 1980s. I worked on a title called Photo Love. Then in 1982, the IPC wanted to relaunch Eagle, included in that relaunch, they produced photo story action stories, and they wanted people with photo story experience to work on the title. So that's how I went across, if you like, from teenage girls' romantic fiction into boys' adventure, for the want of a phrase. So that's when I moved across to what would all the other titles at that time, the IPC kind of boys titles, 2000 AD being one, Tiger being another. We're all kind of in a little group together. So that's where I got involved in the strip side, the comic strip side of sequential storytelling, shall we say. Sequential image storytelling. And then fast forward a few years, and then they decided they wanted to launch a horror title, which was called Scream, which had been knocking around in idea form for a number of years. But they finally decided they would jump in and do it in 1984. And so I got asked if I would like to take on the editorship of that title. So that's when I moved across and became an editor for the first time on Scream. The much controversial, shall we say, for various reasons, Scream. Do we want to go into
a little bit? Yeah, I mean, I think, Andrew and I have talked between us just in terms of previous podcasts about Scream, just because it was so sort of pivotal for me, and and the connectivity between you and I starts there and continues to Marvel UK. So yeah, I think, it'd be lovely to hear a bit more about Scream and that controversy, and really the sort of slightly bitter end of things.
Yes, yeah, it was, yes, quite many strands of this are involved. The first being as I was saying earlier, the idea for a horror title was around for some time at IPC, and principally it was Barry Tomlinson who was kind of the main driver. He could see quite clearly that there was a gap in the market for a horror title, and they wanted to try and fill that gap, and thought sales would be very good. Other people sort of higher up in the management were very wary of what we might call producing a comic nasty. Around that time, early 80s, there was the video nasty controversy, where lots of various titles were being produced, and all kinds of people were losing their minds about how it was going to affect children and anybody who saw this material. And some elements of the board at IPC were very wary that they didn't want to produce what would then be called a comic nasty. So we were always going to have a struggle with content about what was going to be acceptable and what was going to be too strong for the title and for the readership. The dummy that when I first saw it contained pretty much everything that was in the first issues of Scream. And that included a particular strip which was called The Cats, Terror of the Cats, which was kind of like an adaptation of the Hitchcock Birds film, in that it was a natural element of natural creatures in the world going crazy and attacking people. That proved really, really controversial with some people on the board at IPC, And after issue 2, managed to get to issue 2, and they said that's got to come out the title straight away. So that was then we had to come up with something or other that would get us out of that storyline and start us off somewhere else with some kind of natural conclusion, and be able to use some of the material that we had to get us to keep going. That put us way back in terms of production. So we were always going late to printers. And Simon, of course, you know that you were the person who suddenly got this job of rewrite this story, finish it in 3 episodes.
I know. It was a funny one, that, because it wasn't actually my first bit of script writing, because I'd written already by then a Library of Death story, a werewolf one.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point it was like, I became the kind of deadline crunch writer of Scream, because it was like, we need to finish this in 3 or 4 parts. It was like, oh God. And so yeah, suddenly it was like a sort of mad scientist plot and a brain in a tank, I seem to remember.
That's right, yeah.
But yeah.
Is that where you got your penchant for killing off characters? I mean, that echoed through all the way through Transformers, didn't it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah, it was more that was kill off a strip, really, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, and as it happens, fairly coherently, Simon. I think we must say it did have a logic to it, and it worked, and it held everything together. So it was a damn good job. But while that was going on, and we were getting later and later at printers because we had all these issues, there was an industrial dispute at IPC, which is much wider. IPC being a massive publishing organization at the time. So there was a big industrial dispute between the NUJ and the company itself. When that led to various work to rules, which was making us even later at the printers. But then there was the management stepped up things and announced they were cancelling 6 titles, Scream being one of them. There's an element of this that I feel was the management at IPC just thought, here's a way we can get out of this issue, that we don't like this particular comic, we don't like the way it started, we don't like where it's going. Let's cut our losses and close it now in the form under the cloak of an industrial dispute. We weren't the only one. There was some Practical Electronics, I think, was another. As I say, 6 titles that were deemed to go because of this industrial dispute.
Practical Electronics, that very controversial title, it clearly had to go.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the practical bit. There were probably deaths.
Yes. The other thing, wasn't there, in the past that sort of, I think, led to that management nervousness was the whole action comic controversy, whereby there'd been a sort of Daily Mail backlash against the violence in a comic called Action.
Yes.
And I think that had left them gun shy about anything that might get seized upon by especially the Daily Mail type of, Mary Whitehouse crusade.
Yes, I think yes, that's part of the fear that they had. They certainly didn't want a repeat of an episode like that. So yeah, there was that element to it as well.
Makes you realise what a crazy world we live in now, doesn't it?
It's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But that was the thing, and it's funny that on Scream we were very conscious of our audience and the management response to it. But once we got onto Transformers and they were robots, all that rule book went out the window, because you could do anything because they were robots, and it didn't matter. So the story's just up to notch after that.
Yes, indeed, that's very true. Yeah.
So Ian, after Scream then, did you, after that was canned, did you work on anything else there, or was that when you moved across to Marvel UK?
Yes. Well, just to finish the story about the industrial dispute, what happened when those 6 titles were deemed to be closed, and in fact were closed, the NUJ would not put up with that, having to lose members because of an industrial dispute, and so there was a threat of an all-out strike by the NUJ, and that would have stopped all their titles. So, I mean, the escalation had gone up and ramped up and ramped up. So at that point, there's somebody, a very clever person whose name is Peter Rabel, who was an NUJ person, came up with a solution whereby the titles would all close if the IPC wanted to close the titles. But any of the journalists, if they wish to remain employed by IPC, would still be allowed to stay at the company. And that was deemed acceptable to everybody. And the dispute was all settled at that point. I think I don't imagine there was much of a pay rise after all this, but anyway, it got to the point where everybody was going back to work and it was all okay. Subsequent to, while that was all going on, Sheila Cranner, who was I think we've mentioned as previous editor on Transformers, who was working at Marvel at that time, she had approached me and said that Marvel were interested in kind of expanding and had kind of editorial opportunities. So there was a chance that I could go to work with Marvel UK if I wanted. At the point of the end of this dispute, I had not decided to do anything. I didn't know which way I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I got, so the dispute was finally settled. And I remember going back into the office on Monday morning at my desk. Well, okay, what happens now? And I got a phone call from Gil Page, who was one of the managing editors at there. So he said, so we had a chat and talked through it, and he finally plucked up the courage to ask the question and say, so what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And it kind of, again, only at that point and in that conversation, when the kind of subtext to what he was saying was, do you want to go because we don't want you hanging around? I thought, well, all right, then I'll go. And so I decided I would leave, take the redundancy that was being offered, which was very nice. Thank you very much.
It was.
And I think you took a little redundancy package as well, Sam. And I decided to go, and then said yes, I'd take the job at Marvel. So I actually finished at IPC on a Friday afternoon and went and worked at Marvel on the Monday morning, straight
Wow.
from one to the other. And that's how I ended up at Marvel UK.
And was that quite a cultural shock, going from a very sort of old British unionized large publishing house into a smelly little curry flavored room?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was quite a stretch across, but and it was stressed absolutely that the whole point about the Marvel UK was there would be no union involvement. There wouldn't be these kind of industrial disputes, which in fact had happened several times during my time at IPC. I was there from 79 to 84, and I think that was the third industrial dispute that we'd had there. So it's kind of a regular thing. So yes, so it was quite a gear change to move over to Redan Place, where instead of this gigantic tower where we were at King's Reach, in this huge conglomerate of various magazines on all kinds of floors, all the way up to 29, to just a single floor at Redan Place, and much smaller organisation altogether.
And so what was the first thing they got you to do when you arrived at Redan Place? Where was Redan Place? That's like
kind of Queensway.
Yeah, Bayswater, Queensway, that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I came across there was a proposal to launch a Captain Britain monthly, and that was part of the issue of why they initially approached me in the first place. They wanted somebody to take on that, and to take over the weekly reprint of the Spider-Man comic that they did, and plus Conan the Barbarian. So it was to edit. It was effectively, in a small sense, a group editor. I'd moved from being an editor of one title to an editor of three when I first arrived there. It was Conan and Captain Britain and Spider-Man.
And did they already have the Transformers license, when you arrived there, or was that something that came in later?
Yes, again, I think it's memory's a bit vague on this, but it must have been the case that they had the license, because I think the initial first issue of Transformers was in September. And so I only came July, August time, I think it was. So they must have already had plans for the Transformers title to go ahead.
What year was that? And how did that fit in with the Transformers kind of thing anyway in
84,
America?
I think we're talking about 1984.
Yeah.
I've lost my thread there. There was something I was going to go to, and I've forgotten it.
I mean, it's interesting because how aware were you of that comic? Because it sort of fell very much under the group you'd got, really, didn't you? You know, sort of that Marvel boys action.
Yes, it did, and but I think what the issue was that Sheila was already ensconced as being the editor of the title, which kind of makes sense that this was all in the pipeline and it was all happening. Yeah. Before I actually came on board, so that carried on its merry way. Sheila wanted bits of advice about, because there was the awareness that the original material from the US was only a 4-part miniseries, and nobody knew if there was going to be anything else to come to follow it. If they launched a UK version, which Hasbro were very keen for, or Mattel as it was in the UK at that time, were very keen for that to happen. So that was the element, that they didn't know what was going to happen with the Transformers, where the material would just not exist anymore, and therefore they'd need to produce a lot of original material to publish, because otherwise, what else are you going to do? So I think that was another element of why they wanted somebody, myself, from what was Boys Adventure history, if you like, at IPC, to come across and join them at Marvel.
Yeah, sure. And
that's really interesting. I never really considered that thing about it was only originally going to be 4 issues.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing to take on. But obviously Mattel, who were trying to flog the toys, thought it was a good idea to, in one way or another, keep the comic going in the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. They were very strong on this. That was very much part of their marketing strategy, that they wanted the UK title, and they wanted it, regularly out there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to jump ahead here, at some point, I'd had a few months just swanning around, really. I took my redundancy and went on holiday and things. and about this time, I was thinking, God, I really need to think about my career again, having sort of put it on hiatus. And I can't remember which way round. Did I reach out to you? Did we get back in touch?
I think what happened was we put out Marvel put out an advert to try and garner new writers to see if we could find any interest. And I think you saw it and phoned up and said, "Hey," because I was not sure what you were doing, whether you had left the country and had opened a cafeteria in Greece. So, and then you phoned back, and I thought, if Simon's interested, this will work out very well. So, yes, I don't think we even bothered with a reply to the job. I invited you in for an interview, and that was it. I think at that point, that's when you came on board with us at Marvel UK. So,
yeah. I mean, I think I started with Sheila in terms of, you introduced me to Sheila and she gave me a great big stack of reference, and I went off to cook up story ideas. But it must have been fairly quickly after that I joined staff as well.
Yes, yeah, that would follow. That would make sense. Yes, there's a proper thread of ideas at that point. Yeah,
that's right. And I think Captain Britain Monthly was something like issue 5 or something when I came on board, 4 or 5.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I thought you were in before then, but maybe not. Maybe that again, that makes sense. Because yes, that's right. Because you had Jez, who was the assistant editor on that, but he moved across to become a production editor. Yeah, and so yes, and you came in to fill in the void there. That's right. That makes sense.
I know.
Still coming back to you now.
Yeah. I mean, it was such, of course, I didn't think anything about Transformers at the time, as I don't think anybody did. It was just a title that was there and we worked on. But when I think about that initial introduction that you gave me to Sheila, that got me my first job with Marvel and then rolled on into, well, here we are 40 years later talking about it. It's such a big moment, and you don't notice it at the time, but wow, what a moment that was, where you made those introductions, and Sheila gave me work, and then suddenly it became much easier because I was in the office just to continue working on the comic.
Yeah, so that's right. We had that same sort of feel of somebody who's got the in and understands what exactly the title is all about. We had that on Scream in the sense that we could never properly get a good set of authors and to get the right balance of what we were trying to do with Scream, and that's why yourself and I ended up writing various bits and pieces in Scream itself. That just helped. It helped develop the titles in the direction that we all wanted to go much, much quicker. So we'd sort it out, in a conversation, as opposed to backwards and forwards with scripts that, this is that's not quite right, try this, which would take weeks and weeks because there was no internet in those days, of course. So, so it definitely helped to move everything forward much, much quicker.
And I wasn't the first writer on Transformers UK. That was Steve Parkhouse. Did you have a hand in that at all? Did you make any introductions there, or did that come another route?
No, it's not myself at all there. I think that's a connection with Alan McKenzie, who was working at Marvel UK. I think we mentioned him earlier. And I think it was his connection because Steve had been working on the Doctor Who monthly, and I think that must have been, I'm guessing, but that would be Alan's recommendation to Sheila to try Steve Parkhouse.
Yeah, because he came up with a very sort of interesting semi-British mythical story, and our brief was always to make the stories as self-contained as possible, because in the continuing US story, which was running concurrently, we had to be careful not to preempt them or change something that suddenly might be there in the US story that we changed. So Steve's was particularly well sort of crafted to make it sort of exist out of the continuity slightly.
Yes.
I guess his take on it was kind of proved to be okay in the Transformers universe with there was one of the last Bay films, wasn't it? That was all about Arthurian legend.
It was, yeah,
and that kind of thing. So that connects.
I think there was an episode of the cartoon show where they travelled to King Arthur's time, but you know what I mean. Sort of there was a sort of link there, and maybe that all fed into it.
Yeah, indeed.
So let's step out of Transformers for a moment, because while I was, both. Actually, sorry. There's one more little bit of linkage, isn't there? You became the editor on Transformers UK. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's right. Yes. Well, again, I think we mentioned earlier that I think Alan McKenzie left Marvel UK, so Sheila moved across to take over Doctor Who Monthly, and as we'd said earlier, Transformers sort of fitted into to what would have been the Boys' Adventure Room, so they brought it across to us to have a go at. Again, there'd been issues with Mattel. We're unhappy with some elements of the title, so it kind of helped if Marvel UK could say, well, we've changed the editor and we've got a new team working on it, and this is how it's going to go forward from here. But we also got very, very lucky because we moved across to around this time, as we were saying earlier, to going to a weekly title, but also to go into full color, which fitted in with the shiny, sleek, gleaming robots much better to have that in full color, as opposed to say Scream, which had the original grainy black and white images, which fitted extremely well for that title. We moving across to full color and weekly worked really well for us on the subject matter we were dealing with.
When you took it over, Ian, did you feel like you had a particular kind of vision as to how it would go, or was it just like another comic that you were going to do the editing on, or did you feel like it had a direction that you could take?
Well, I felt we wanted to make it, because it had been something of a bit of a mishmash before, that we wanted to keep it very much robots, all about robots all the way through. So even the letters page and the introduction page, everything was geared to making it much more about the robots, and it was a robot title. Even to the extent where we again got lucky with the backup strip that was Machine Man, the original Machine Man 2020, which I think Tom DeFalco had written. That we were able to use that as the backup strip. So even that fed into this whole feel that this was a robot title all the way through.
That's very interesting, actually, because that Machine Man 2020 with the Barry Smith artwork,
that's right, yes,
was the biggest influence on how I drew Transformers when I came onto it, certainly on the American book.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
I mean, it was a great series. So as a backup strip, it probably was one of the best we ever had, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. It worked really well. So as I say, it pulled the whole thing into being this was children buying it on the newsstand. We're buying a robot title that was all about robots all the way through. Which seemed to have done all right.
yeah, absolutely. And there was a design revamp as well with the comic.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So this was our friend John Tomlinson, who was very much involved in. It was one of those things. It was how much of this is design and how much is happy accident. But we got a group of people in our little boy's office who were very, very good at what they were doing. That all came together to gel to make the sum of the parts was really, really good. And John was excellent, lovely stuff he would pull together on the design of what were basically very simple pages, but made them interesting and visual, and it right up there in the robot field for how you wanted it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I knew John, because we were both doing graphic design at Leicester Polytechnic. So he was obviously a very visual person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Great. I mean, he was a brilliant designer, and we used to have everything was old-fashioned layout then, wasn't it? Stuck down run through a glue machine and stuck down on a design page, and photographed in something called a photomechanical transfer machine, and it was so primitive by today's standards.
It really was, wasn't it? Back to the early days of print, 1500s and things like that. That's how it felt. That's how it looks now, doesn't it? In comparison to what we do these days. My word.
Yeah.
And I can't remember whether it was you who came up with the idea of, because we'd had it on Scream, where Ghastly McNasty was this sort of fictional editor of the title, and he would often address the readers. He became the voice of the comic. Did you come up with the idea of Soundwaves, of putting a transformer as the letter answerer?
Yeah, I think it was that, or it might have been some kind of brainstormy thing where what will work. It's better if we can have a controlling voice. Which voice should it be, and so on and so on. And it's one of those brainstormy things that pulls it all together. That I can't remember who came up with the absolute idea. It should be Soundwave, but the whole point. Yeah, it's a stellar. I mean, yes, it happened with Ghastly McNasty on screen, but of course we'd stolen that from Tharg on 2000 AD.
Yes.
So, if it's a good idea, let's pursue that idea.
Absolutely. And there was a ton of mail came in, wasn't there, to Transformers? We'd introduced this idea that Soundwave, who's a Decepticon, is just rude to the letter answerers and dismissive and sometimes doesn't answer the question. And we had a sort of mechanical spitting effect
Right,
noise, which was put up or something. But the readers loved it. It was like the mailbag exploded, and it was great. We had a license just to say, "Oh, don't be so stupid." That small mistake. Who cares?
It was all with get away with it because that's his character. So it just worked, and as you say, it was very popular.
Yeah,
did very well.
So while I was sort of writing for Transformers, you were doing some writing of your own on ZOIDS, I believe.
Yes, ZOIDS came in. Again, we're back to Alan Mackenzie and Steve Parker. They did an original, which there was no, as far as I'm aware, there was no thought of ever producing a ZOIDS comic. It was just that they wanted to put some inserts, advertising inserts, into various different publications. I assume mostly Marvel publications, but others as well. I imagine that they wanted to hit as many titles as they could. That was the marketing ploy that they were using. That they had some these advert inserts that would stand alone as little bits of trailer of some kind of odd backstory to these again mechanical robots. And then somehow it was fabulously beautiful work that they produced. I seem to remember it looked gorgeous. And then at some point along the line, I think Marvel got offered a license to do a regular strip with it. And it was we never thought we could get as far as give it its own title. But we couldn't use it as a backup in Transformers. No. That would never fly. But so eventually it landed in with the Spider-Man weekly title that and a little bit later, I think we got to early 1986, I think maybe when that was coming out.
Yep.
That started in what became Spider-Man and ZOIDS for a period. And somehow you were busy with Transformers, and somehow or other I thought, well, I'll try and see what I can do with ZOIDS, because I quite like the models and I like the variety with them and what have you. So I had to go at trying to take that little group of giant robots forward somewhere.
Yeah. Did you have to get permission from Marvel US head office to put something that wasn't Marvel in a Marvel book? So like ZOIDS and Spider-Man are not very strange bedfellows.
And no, as far as I know, it was done. That's above our sort of pay grade. So that the negotiations would have been done with the managing editor at Marvel, which was Robert Sutherland, I think, at the time. But they appear to have been okay with it. They didn't have an issue with it. They never any objection, as far as I'm aware.
And there wasn't a competing thing, really. This was the only ZOIDS comic strip. So I don't think there was an issue with ownership. It was just like, well, okay, great. This is Marvel ZOIDS material. And it was all Europe based. I didn't realize till later that these toys that we based the comics, or you based the comic strip around, were European releases. They weren't American releases and they weren't Japanese releases. It was a Euro ZOIDS toy line.
Right. Okay. Yeah. See, that makes a lot of sense. It's something I was not aware of either. I thought they originated in Japan and we were using what was there. That kind of makes a bit of sense in that I've heard several times people. We've seen lots of reprinted material for products that were being produced, but there's never been kind of reprint of any ZOIDS, and that would make some sense in that nobody knows who's got the proper licenses for all these things.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a bit like Blade Runner. It's very complicated. Who owns what? with Zoids,
Yes.
because, like I say, this was this sort of Eurozone Zoids, and nobody quite knows who has the rights to that.
That's an interesting point, Sam, because I don't know if you remember that bit, but when we first got involved with Transformers, there was a set of Transformer toys that were being produced by a different company other than Mattel stroke Hasbro.
Yes.
And Mattel stroke Hasbro got round this problem by just buying up the other toys.
That's right, yeah. Well, I think it was possibly Bandai.
Yes, could have been.
Because one of the figures, Jetfire, started life as a one of those Macross Robotech characters, I think.
Yeah.
And then got, yeah, as you say, there was this, bit of a muddle about who owned the character. So yeah, Hasbro bought the company.
Just simply got round. Well, let's buy the company.
Yeah.
Because at that point they knew that they were onto a winner, I think. And so that was a simple and cost-effective way of sorting out a problem. I think it worked very well for them, hasn't it?
And I think I'm right in saying eventually Hasbro bought whoever owned GoBots, which was this other brand of transforming robots.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Just as like a stripping exercise, just to get it out of the way, or so they can handle their own competition.
Both. I think they absorbed some of the bits they wanted, and yes, just got rid of the bits they didn't.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we had a couple of sort of questions and comments, interesting ones from one of our listeners, Russ Sheath, who's well known in comics and ran the Isle of Wight Comics Festival, so that was great. But he said that Zoids are huge elsewhere still to this day, and there was an animated series in the 2000s from Japan. But we don't really hear anything of it.
I believe there was an animated series, yes, but completely different to anything that we were doing, obviously.
Yeah, and you can still get all the new stuff in Forbidden Planet, I think, sell the current toy line. So there's obviously a fan base out there for that one. But
and amazingly, Zoids features some of Grant Morrison's really earliest work.
That's right. Yes. Grant was just coming on, just breaking into the scene at that point, and it was one of the sort of successes that I thought, he can write. We should try and get him.
Yes.
So he did a little bit of work on Zoids, and the Black Zoid, I think it was a big saga of his that was going. That was a nice little coup for us that we got him going.
It was. There were plans for a Zoids monthly that got as far as a first issue, I think, written by Richard Starkings and drawn by Steve Yoel, and Grant was involved with that as well. But it would have been wonderful if we'd got that. I think Richard still has some of the artwork for it, but sadly it never happened.
It's one that never made it. Yes,
even if it had happened, you wouldn't be able to reprint it because nobody knows who owns it.
No.
So was there a natural, in terms of time, so was Zoids and Transformers being published at the same time, and was there a natural transfer of, given that they're robot books essentially, a natural transfer of creative talent from Zoids to Transformers? Because that was all slightly before my time at Marvel UK. I never did any Zoids.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember who it was. Kev, wasn't it? It was
Kev Hopgood originally, and he wasn't really a Transformers. I think he maybe did one or something.
Yeah, he did one or two, didn't he? Yeah, but not too many. Yeah.
No, and other than that, the only one I can think of particularly, other than Kev, is Steve Yoel.
Yes, that's right. Steve, again, we started with Steve on Zoids, I think, but he may well have gone across to Transformers after the Zoids had kind of folded or dropped away from the scene.
Yeah, maybe Jeff did some covers, Jeff Senior, but I don't remember there being many different artists. Kev, I feel, did a large chunk of it himself.
Yes, most of the material that I wrote, that was Kev who drew on that. Yes.
Yeah, because Shane, who'd pitched in, Russ, sorry, who'd pitched in that other question, has a memory that Kev and Jeff worked on the series. And did Rich write some issues under a pen name?
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He certainly did
Yeah,
write something.
he was, because we had Steve Allen and Richard Allen as pseudonyms, didn't we? One was John
Yes.
Tomlinson's and one was Richard's. I always assume he's Richard Allen, and Steve Allen for some reason was John Tomlinson's pen name.
Yeah. It was just that every other person working in comics seemed to be a Steve or an Alan.
That's right.
So there was various combinations of those two names.
Yes. So tell me about Hasbro. I often get asked how were Hasbro to work with on Transformers, as editing, while we were editing the comic. And my experience with Hasbro was always really good. And I seem to remember that when we were working and you were editor, that we did a lot with Hasbro. There didn't seem to be many abrasive elements.
No, I think we mentioned earlier that we were very much part of their marketing strategy for the toy line. So yeah, they wanted to work quite closely with us, and we didn't mind because they very kindly paid for some TV adverts for us. I seem to remember. Well, so we weren't going to say no.
No, because we sort of tagged on to the end of their product adverts, didn't we? It would be the product, and then the cover would spin up, and it would be special teams or new leaders or whichever one. So it was worth its weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, very much so. Yeah, it was. A lot of the interaction with it was again slightly above our pay grade in terms of. I remember having a conversation with Robert, and how he in the initial times with dealing with Mattel Hasbro, it was kind of butting up against them, and they would often complain or say, no, we don't want that, we want this and whatever. And he said. We've been running for about 10, 20 issues or something like that. And he said he picked up the phone one morning, and it was the people from Mattel, and he picked it up and they said, hi, we just wanted a word about the comic. And Robert had come to the end of his tether with it and went, oh, what is it now? And they said, no, it's not a problem at all. We just wanted to say we're really happy with the comic and we like how it's going. When Robert told me that, I thought, actually, we've actually sort of nailed it down here. I think we've got it functioning, and it's going pretty smoothly now. We'd sorted out all the issues and the conflicts and whatever. This kind of symbiotic relationship was working pretty well.
And before you left Marvel, I had moved on to Thundercats as editor. They were launching the Thundercats comic, and it was a chance for me to step up and edit a title. So I was really pleased to do that. And then I think somewhere within a month or so after that, you left Marvel and I was dragged back to Transformers to edit that.
Nearly got away. Not quite.
No, that's right. I thought I was out and they pulled me back in. So tell us a bit about your career post Marvel UK.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the reason why I decided I wanted to stop editing and concentrate on the writing side of things, and I thought the only way to do this realistically is to go freelance and try and make a go of that. I was fortunate enough to have contacts with Marvel, so I was able to get a little bit of work there, and just tried to pick up various pieces of work wherever I could. So somewhere along the line, down the road, I've worked for very, very many licensed products, very young stuff like Winnie the Pooh. I was working on for a long time. I like that. That was weird because that was Winnie the Pooh material, which was these quintessentially English characters, but the publication was for Germany.
Wow!
Everything had to be translated into German. I still head scratch at this. I don't know quite how that worked, but for a number of years I was doing that, and that. Really, really complicated. It was written in English for a German market, for a Swedish company, and they paid me in kroner and Swedish
Wow.
that I had to transfer across back into pound sterling. Weird combination
Yes.
for Winnie the Pooh. These English characters. But anyway, other stuff. I did an awful lot of Power Rangers that I was working on for quite a while. I did some Wallace and Gromit, Simon,
Yes,
as we know very
absolutely,
well, for Titan Books. And then also I got some work, which I'm very, very pleased about, working on Roy the Rovers. I did some football stories for Roy the Rovers, including the Roy title. When that was with, it was a period when Match of the Day was running, and they produced a Match of the Day magazine, and so they put the Roy Rovers strip in there, just a little 2-page strip each month, and in that, really liked that. That was a nice gig. But that was the point where Match of the Day stopped. BBC lost the license to produce that, the football highlights package program for mid 90s. I think this was for about 4 years, and that was the end of that Match of the Day publication. So that died away. So yeah, it's been material like that that I've been trying to do.
Given that you worked on younger kids stuff, did you ever consider, or did you work in animation, scripting for animation?
No, I always thought I'd like to try that, but could never find a way in to go anywhere with it. So I had no access to who to apply to, what to apply to, how to go about applying. So like I'd always thought I'd like to try that. I never got anywhere actually doing it.
Yeah, it is its own little cottage industry, isn't it? And sometimes it's hard to break through that.
It's the same with comics. Comics is like that as well, isn't it? It's hard for a lot of people to, when we were working, and that period, that was its own little cottage industry as well. Sorry, my wife's just come in. I'm just waving at my wife. Sorry.
Hello, Joe.
She bought us some tea, is she?
Yes.
Yeah, Joe used to work at Marvel with.
Yes, so I know Joe from way back.
She's going to put her head in the shit. There she is.
Hello, Joe.
I'm blonde these days.
Yes.
Thanks the grey.
Lovely to see you.
It's another transformation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll wrap things up shortly, but I think one final question is: are you, like us, still amazed and flabbergasted that we're still here 40 years plus on talking about Transformers?
Yes, absolutely so. It is staggering when you consider. I feel, because we mentioned it earlier, it only began with this 4-issue miniseries at Marvel in the US. So they went, if that's all they committed to, it must have been, well, this might work, might not work, or whatever. When somehow or other,
yes,
from that tiny acorn, it's still here with us. It's still going strong, and I'm sure it's going to continue.
Yeah,
but kids like robots, don't they? Kids like giant robots, and if they're going to bash the living daylights out of each other, all the better. And it makes for great visuals. So comics are going to work very well.
Yeah,
and
it's funny. 2 toys in one. That's
yes, exactly. I mean, it's transformable as a concept, so it kind of keeps coming back.
Yeah.
But, interestingly, a lot of the creators now, whether they're writers or artists or both in Transformers, are the people who grew up reading Transformers UK.
Yes.
So there's a writer called James Roberts, a writer-artist called Nick Roach, all of whom came in at stages. I think Nick, Target 2006, around that stage, James slightly later. But, and they are now the creators on Transformers. So, it's the most wonderful thing to think that the kids we were impressing back then have now become comics pros themselves.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thought, Simon. Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me that would be the case. But yeah, it's what inspires you when you're young, and if you're able to make your own career at it going forward, well, fantastic, and it pulls you into an area that you want to pursue. Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
That's almost legacy.
It is. No,
Almost.
it definitely is. And like we were saying at the beginning, your input into Transformers UK really was the building block for that success and longevity. I'm really not sure the comic would have gone as ballistic as it did, because it was outselling 2000 AD for a
Yeah,
while,
it
wasn't
was.
it?
We were selling very well. Yeah, yeah. It
And
was hugely popular. It was it also the one really weird thing about it at the time. We'd had in the past various Christmas crazes of toys and toy lines and things that were really popular. Cabbage Patch Kids being the one of them, and then we suddenly found that was us. That the product we were working on
yes.
became that Christmas craze. For I think it was '85 was the real big one, where nobody could get the toys.
Yeah.
And I had people getting in touch with me saying, "Can you get us an Optimus Prime?" I wish I could, but no, because we can't get them either. It was that one thing that it suddenly mushroomed to this giant explosion of interest. And that was extraordinary to think that we were in the middle of that.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's great. And, it's been really good talking to you, Ian. And I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this, because I just don't think a lot of this has really been covered before in from this angle. So it's been great for us. And I think everyone's going to get a blast out of listening.
Well, everybody's most welcome. So it's been a lot of fun. It's brought back a lot of memories for it. It was really interesting to think, because I haven't thought about this stuff for quite a while, and suddenly to think about it, yeah, that was really enjoyable. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for inviting me along.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to finally meet you, Ian.
Yes, indeed, Andrew. Andrew, yes, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah,
not Andy.
No. Anyway, thank you, Ian, and thank you everyone for listening. And we will be back to Andrew and I just muttering incoherently to each other next time.
Yeah, we will do. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, folks. Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfur production.